For my classroom technology resource project, I chose to look at an article about resources that could be used at home during the pandemic. This article, titled Apps for Students with Special Needs as School Buildings Shutter, explores the challenges that the pandemic created for special education students and teachers. This article acknowledges that pre-pandemic, it was already difficult to deliver differentiated content, but now being remote, teachers need to reinvent their approach to learning. The parent and teacher relationship has also evolved during the pandemic, since most of the child's immediate instruction is being given by a parent at home. The author explains how she saw these challenges that the pandemic posed and took to a Facebook group called Education App Talk to help try to find resources for her special education students. She lists a variety of both free and paid for apps, ranging from educational tools to help with counting and reading, all the way to a virtual dollhouse for students to play with. Lastly, she explains what parents can do at home to provide their students with digital modifications necessary for them to use on their home computers. The key points and insights from this article include the fear that both parents and teachers share about keeping their students on track with their IEPs. An IEP is an individualized education plan that is built for students to receive special education services. An IEP outlines a goal or a progress mark that both teachers and parents help guide their child towards. It is important that you stay on top of your child's IEP regardless of pandemic conditions or not, because the modifications and accommodations are not static and can change based on any number of factors. So it's important to be aware if your child is meeting the goals or not. Another important strategy the article outlines for parents is to make sure they are modifying the apps that they are providing their children with. It is not simply enough just to use the app if the app isn't best serving the student. This can include turning on text-to-speech options or increasing font sizes. The same applies for at-home devices such as computers, laptops, or iPads. It is important to learn how to adjust the settings on your home devices so they emulate most closely the devices that your child will be using at school. Of course, another strategy is to be mindful and be patient. Change can already be scary for a child, and sometimes it's even more scary for a student with special needs because they're usually used to a routine. The pros of using at-home educational apps would be to transform the space at home and just really best meet the needs of your students' educational needs, help students stay on track with their IEP during remote learning, help parents and caregivers deliver the instruction because it can sometimes be difficult if you're not already used to delivering instruction. Some cons could be it takes a lot of time to plan and ensure that the app is modified exactly how your student needs it. And some apps cost money, which may not be an option for some families. How can this be implemented? You can implement the app-based learning in this article at home by doing the following. Review your child's IEP. What are the goals? What modifications and accommodations are outlined in it? This way, you can search for apps that will help your child meet the goals of their IEP and their specific accommodations and modifications. Searching for the app will take some time, but parents should be patient and open-minded. They may want to download a few apps and try them out themselves before allowing their student to try. They should watch video tutorials on how to customize the app you picked and explore all the setting options. Some tools may not work for every student based off the accommodations that they need. You should also modify the app as needed. Your child may ask you to turn down the brightness of an app or even enhance the text size. These requests may not be specific accommodations outlined in their IEP, but it's important to make your child comfortable regardless. Lastly, change is disruptive. It can lead to emotional and social regression, and it is important to implement small strategies to combat frustration that your student may be having. The learning theory that I believe is being exhibited in this article is cognitive learning theory. Cognitive learning theory looks at mental processes and understands that they are influenced by internal and external forces. By using apps, students are able to ask questions, think out loud, and use the app to inquire. By doing so, they are understanding how their thought process works. I also think that since cognitive learning theory acknowledges that external factors play a role in thought processes, is more fitting for a remote learning situation as outlined in the article. Since students are home, learning on a new computer in a new environment, they need to acknowledge how they can best achieve learning in that new environment. So who are special needs learners? Special needs students are students who require special education services and are also students who have some form of disability that impacts their ability to be able to learn at the same pace or in the same environment as other students of their chronological age in a general education classroom. In order to be placed into special education services, a child must undergo an IEP process, which takes time. The IEP outlines the accommodations and modifications the student needs and outlines a learning plan for the student. IEP teams consist of parents, teachers, aides, school psychologists, social workers, and many more to ensure the integrity of the process and provide a large support system for both the student and the parent. IEPs are evaluated annually and are subject to change based on a number of reasons. All the students who receive special education services have some form of IEP on file with the school. The challenges that special needs students face are great. Depending on the disability, the child can have a difficult time with mobility, schoolwork, communication, and behavior, and these are just a few. These challenges can pose a hurdle for them in the real world that is historically built for able-bodied individuals. For example, difficulty with mobility can be a challenge for a student in a wheelchair. Their access to certain activities can be restricted because of it. Or a student with a hearing impairment may have a difficult time communicating at, let's say, a playground or a restaurant if the proper accommodations for them aren't identified and provided for them. So here are some of the challenges that can be posed for integrating educational apps in the home. As the article points out, change is disruptive, and the pandemic has already placed a lot of change on the student. So learning a new app may be too challenging for them because it's not what they're used to. Another challenge would be that your student really wants to use this one educational app that their friend mentioned using on Zoom, but it may not come with the modifications that your student requires. For example, if an app doesn't allow you to increase text size, this can pose two challenges. One being a modification that was outlined in your student's IEP not being met, and the second being frustration that comes along with not being able to use it. Students may find it frustrating to learn the app and may not want to do it at first, which can lead to emotional breakdowns and meltdowns. Lastly, if a family cannot afford an iPad or a tablet, or if the family shares one for the entire family with multiple children, the student may not be able to benefit from using the apps as much as they would be if they had unlimited access to a device. Some strategies to overcome these challenges and barriers would be first and foremost to be patient with the student. It is also important to be patient with yourself as you are learning something new too. Plan ahead and ensure that when it comes time to teach your child how to use the app, you are well versed and able to answer their questions. This includes watching video tutorials and exploring the app yourself. Invest in your child's education. This means coming up with a financial plan on how to support your child's needs during remote learning. This can be budgeting each month for how much you're willing to spend on apps or subscriptions, and then possibly how much you're willing to invest into devices. This can also go as far as looking at Wi-Fi speeds, which is another factor in investing in your child's education for home learning. You should also review the IEP as a guide for deciding which apps will work best for your child's specific accommodations. And lastly, implementing strategies not only for the student to overcome frustration, but for you as well. Some of the benefits of using educational apps to support learning would be the students being able to learn in the comfort of their homes. Depending on the disability that a student has, it may be more comfortable for them to sit on their couch or in a special chair at home than it would be for them to sit in their wheelchair or a desk at school. Also, there's one-on-one attention to the child's needs at home from the parent. Say a child has sensory overload being at school, and being at home is a more controlled environment where the conditions can be easily managed and changed at the child's will. Also, bringing high-quality education tools to the home may not have previously existed before. So some of the apps could have very well have been being used in the schools, but parents never sought out bringing those resources into the home. Parents play a more active role in their child's learning because they're learning how to use these apps alongside. The parents are learning how to navigate the remote learning world the same as their child, and this can lead to a new understanding in their relationship. Additionally, being home and using virtual apps is a low-stakes environment to interact socially for students. For some students who have social disparities, interacting through an app is less daunting than doing it in person. Here are some questions that you should answer and reflect on what was just presented. What are some tips you would give to parents for using educational apps at home for special needs learners? How would a different group of marginalized learners benefit from educational apps during the pandemic at home? Analyze the idea of educational apps and think about additional ways it could benefit special needs learners. And lastly, apps can be both beneficial and challenging for students and parents. Educational apps have the ability to play a large role in remote and virtual learning. Special needs learners already face many challenges in their education, so supporting them in every way possible, especially during online learning, is crucial. These are my sources. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.